I don't know how we.
So we'll be working together. What I'd like to do. I have taken medical medicine.
Yes. Yeah, you're welcome.
I saw that.
There was one actually hidden in the back.
That's all.
Any way I can help?
Surprised me. It's opting to hear that.
Good. Oh, great.
I know the medicine. I don't know how to deliver the medicine. Delivering the medicine is different than treatment. That's right. I'm a personal employer.
How are you really?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
Years back.
Every nick and cranny.
Even way everything beyond that.
Oh, really?
He's really nice guy. Your boss? Which one is the biggest? Rex or Box? Sorry.
Looking forward to hearing about all the good things going on.
So have you been king of Box?
Everything is about y'all's report.
Probably expensive to be. You know, if you
I enjoy the fighting.
what Roy, the
That's
richest man in
I give what I do. They put them in a nice little package. I give them out to people.
his king one year is always
$1. Wow. You know, it's like and then, you got a tasty tomato about 9 months out of the year. For
So I'm thinking about the guy. Roy O'More. I did. Bill? But I called me up and
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
Good.
I know I
and they approved everything.
Yeah, you're
We
welcome.
had a great
Your tickets are at your desk.
they approved everything. More, including the LSU.
I want to see it all.
You all go to Montreal? It's a hell of a New Orleans.
Wait. Yes.
All the big
You're around the office anytime.
Galley show today.
Very cool.
good teachers was a great doctor.
Right?
Actually, this has been the worst way.
Oh. Yeah.
Let me see. How long is the board meeting? Through it.
Any luck? We're good. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that. I have time.
Can you get to your junk mail? Maybe it went there.
Yep.
Hey, how are you? Hey, nice to meet you.
Oh.
Picked it up. Sure. You may have to reset your password. That might be.
Did you,
Um,
you can see by the hurricane and all?
we're not doing it.
No, it's not hardly.
What about?
A few raindrops. That's about it.
Beginning of rainfall.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that's my house.
The other dry. Okay. They're here. That it's yeah.
You have a new program.
Okay.
Good.
Right.
No, bro, we started last month.
Oh, I
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's
Right.
going to
Yeah.
discussion on the founding formula on your channel. Yeah, right? Isn't that happening on your channel? Founding formula. I think so. Yeah, I think so. The 18th or 19th of this month.
I think it's effective. Set it.
Well, sure.
I'm not really sure. I think it's on your channel. They told me
Yeah.
it's
I
unit.
just have to.
There's only one unit. No, but you should know more of it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, we're not.
Actually, it's my new program told me was
In fact, it's on my calendar.
no, I'm not going. I'm not going.
No, you're not.
Yeah, my CFO and my program. I don't think I received formal notice. Maybe you didn't. I mean, you know what you I do.
I was. We missed you.
Yes, ma'am.
Get logged out or anything. Everything's like that. That's how you get. I've had it enough to log in and password.
We're not. Oh,
That's not my personal one.
Okay, now
Yep. Yeah, so the passcode, the passcode to get you in, and then username. You have an old one. It's not right. Make sure. Here, I'll use this one. I'll get you one with it.
Okay. We'll be able. Like we're loaded up. Go to Arling.
Morning, how are you?
Oh, not at all. It's a free time. Better.
You missed that last one. Stephanie?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. We will now begin the committee meetings for the Louisiana State University Board of Supervisors. Ms. Tomlinson, is there anyone signed up for public comment today?
Yes, we have 3 individuals signed up for public comment. Phyllis Benoit and Jan Skelton and Janice Hernandez. So if you will come up and come to the podium for public comment.
Do I need this?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to address you. My name is Jan Skelton, and I am a Jefferson Parish retired teacher and coach of 40 years. I have also been an avid LSU Lady Tiger basketball fan and season ticket holder for over 20 years. And I'm here this morning in support of Coach Nikki Fargas. After retiring in 2007, I moved to the Baton Rouge area to be closer to LSU, making it easier to attend games, practices, and other Lady Tiger events. Additionally, I have been able to travel to support the team wherever they play, near and far. Over the past 7 years, I have witnessed Coach Fargas and her compassion for the Baton Rouge community, for LSU, and most importantly, for every player on her team. Her focus is on the success of these young women in the classroom, on the court, and in the community. Their 100% graduation rate is evidence of her concern for the future of every Lady Tiger. As the second winningest coach in Lady Tiger history, Coach Fargas has recorded an average of 19 wins per season, even including the stats of 3 years ago when 4 starting players were out for the year. With only 6 healthy players that season, the Lady Tigers even beat Coach Vargas's alma mater, Tennessee. Last year, the Lady Tigers beat several ranked teams and moved into the top 25 of 349 teams in the national rankings, while also ending the season 4th in the SEC, one of the toughest conferences in the country. I know that you are aware that when Coach Vargas arrived at LSU, she and her staff had to pretty much start over in rebuilding a diminished program. Most significantly, there were no future recruits scheduled to come here. Coach Vargas and her staff have since recruited diligently, resulting now with several players who were ranked in the top 10 and the top 25 in their positions nationwide. Coach Vargas has a history of success, winning national championships as both a player and as an assistant coach. She was also successful as the UCLA head coach and as the USA under-18 and then the USA under-19 national teams. She is the first LSU coach to win 2 gold medals at that level. Her history and credentials are indicative of what she brings to LSU. Fans from other universities across the country have told us how they love our coach. Because she is a professional, distinguished coach, she is highly respected throughout the women's basketball world. What a great ambassador for LSU, an awesome role model she is. Coach Vargas has the greatest respect and admiration for LSU's late, great Coach Sue Gunner, and she chose to come to LSU to honor Coach Gunner's legacy. Rebuilding what Coach Gunner originally established will happen, given time and the expertise that this coaching staff has brought to LSU. An essential factor in recruiting is being able to ensure future players that their coach has security in the job. We are proud to enthusiastically support Coach Nikki Vargas and hope you will extend her contract today. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Phyllis Benoit, and I thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf also for Coach Nikki Vargas and her staff. I've been an avid fan of athletics all of my life. As a former player, physical education teacher, coach, and school principal, I believe that all types of athletic programs are good for young people. For many of the youth who love competition, athletic programs help to keep them in an educational setting. I want to congratulate the new members of this board, as well as those of you who have been serving these past years. Your responsibilities are numerous and impact so many facets of the operation of LSU, from academics to athletics to personnel. In every area, you are seeking the best as it becomes a reflection of your decision-making. The new board members are entering the arena with fresh ideas and plans. Those of you who have been serving on the board are looked to by them for guidance, acceptance, and cooperation. When Coach Vargas was hired as the Lady Tiger basketball coach, she too came into the program with fresh ideas and plans. She looked to those fans and personnel around her for support, acceptance, and cooperation. That particular road has been one that has required many adjustments on her part in her untiring efforts to rebuild the Lady Tiger basketball program. While there are fan approval factors that have been distractions in her attempts to bring the program to where it needs to be, she has not and will not allow those to deter in her plans for the program. For those of us who continually back the program and have taken time to get to know Coach Vargas, we see her many positive attributes, especially caring about others. She shows her love of basketball through her work ethics, executing her genuine devotion to the players by demanding that academics are first. her relentless love for her family by never being too tired to spend time with them, and loving the Baton Rouge community by being involved in so many worthwhile activities. Also, during her personal time, she's involved in national charitable activities by serving on boards and participating in fundraisers to help others. I have supported LSU women's basketball program along with other LSU sports programs for the over 20 years. During these 20 years, I have supported the former women's basketball coaches through good times and not so good times. I travel at my own expense to out-of-town games. The young ladies on the team work hard and put forth their very best every time they take the court. They, just as all other athletes, are deserving of fan support. They take pride in representing LSU, and I'm proud to show my support for the team. Your dedication to LSU and the success of all programs is the same dedication that Coach Vargas has for our women's basketball program. I ask you to give her the time and opportunity to make this happen. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Janice Hernandez. After the last board meeting when Coach Vargas's contract renewal was pulled from the agenda, some people took to social media to urge others to contact you to oppose the renewal of her contract. I doubt that any of those people even attend Lady Tiger basketball games, but I worried that their voices would be the only ones heard. I feel strongly that Coach Vargas's contract should be renewed and appreciate the opportunity to address you today. I have been attending Lady Tiger basketball games for only 6 years. Some friends invited me to a game, and I quickly became a fan. My husband and I became season ticket holders and also joined the Give and Go Club. I enjoy watching the Lady Tigers play and even travel to many away games to support them. I originally went to the games because friends invited me, but I went back because of Coach Vargas. As a retired teacher, I appreciate Coach Vargas's efforts to provide a well-rounded experience for her student athletes. Her emphasis on academics, discipline, and community service, along with her coaching, are exemplary. I don't know as much about basketball as my friends here today. Some of them have even coached. I hope you have read their letters of support, but I do understand the concept that recruiting will be hampered if Coach Vargas is not given the support she deserves. This university and this community as a whole will be affected. I urge you to approve the renewal of Coach Vargas's contract. Thank you.
Thank you. In court, people get sanctioned for that. Which court? Mrs. Jones, can you please convene the Healthcare Committee meeting?
Ms. Tomlinson, please call the roll.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Yarborough? Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Blossman?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Chatelain?
Here.
Mr. Mallett?
Here.
Ms. Werner?
Here.
Chair, you have quorum.
At this time, we'll take up the proposed cooperative endeavor agreement between LSU Health Sciences Center, Shreveport, Ochsner, and the state of Louisiana. Before we dig into the proposal, I'd like to ask a few people for comments, including some guests. President Alexander, would you mind sharing a few words?
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to, as this item gets voted on, I'd like to just thank the work that Ochsner and our teams have done together for this past year. It has been a joy to work together virtually every single day, and on making sure that this is an ironclad agreement that will both grow, help Ochsner succeed, as well as help our medical school in Shreveport serve northern Louisiana, grow and expand in years to come. So at this time, I greatly appreciate the fact that Warner Thomas, the Chief Executive Officer and President of Ochsner, is here, and I'd like to ask Warner if he would like to share some of his thoughts over the past year and collaboration that we've put together here.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for the opportunity to come and chat with you today. I thought I would maybe start by, first of all, just commenting. I've been involved with many relationships, many partnerships over nearly 30 years in my career. This is probably one of the most complicated that we've been involved with, but I would also say that at the end of the day, the team and their ability to work together to really come to a mutually agreeable and mutually beneficial relationship has been simply outstanding. I want to just make a couple of comments about Ochsner, just so you know who you'll be involved with in getting involved with this partnership, and why we could be a good partner for LSU, and also just some comments about the partnership. So Ochsner is the largest not-for-profit health system in the state. Last year we took care of over 730,000 different people from every parish in Louisiana, every state in the U.S., and over 60 countries from around the world. So Ochsner is a true destination organization. We're also the only organization ranked in the U.S. News and World Report Top 50. We have 4 specialties that are ranked in the top 50, and regardless of the quality measures you look at, Ochsner continues to be ranked in the top 1% of healthcare organizations in the state. We also have significant experience in operating physician groups. We have over 1,300 physicians in the Ochsner Clinic, and I think that's very important in this relationship, given our involvement with the faculty group practice and working with the LSU faculty going forward. A little bit about Ochsner, why we're a great partner. I mentioned our quality outcomes are really second to none in the region. We have a significant depth from a leadership and capability perspective. We've built a comprehensive leadership institute in conjunction with General Electric over the past decade, which has really helped to foster our capability and allow us to grow and expand in a number of ways. We have deep academic experience. So Ochsner currently has nearly 300 residents and fellows in our own academic programs. We do have some joint programs with LSU in New Orleans as well. And I think because of that experience in academic medicine, it makes us a good partner for LSU in Shreveport, because we understand academic medical centers. We know how to work in these types of environments. We also have been able to show significant operational and financial success over a number of years, and I think you will find a lot of people have used our facilities or been in our facilities, and even though we're not perfect, we certainly work hard to get better every day, and I think are able to deliver a great experience to our patients. Finally, just some comments on the partnership. One of the things that was important to us as we went into this is we understood some of the challenges with the previous relationship with VRF, and it was really important to us that this become a true partnership, that it had to be a 50-50 partnership, and we wanted LSU to be right there, shoulder to shoulder with us as we kind of go through the challenges that will face us in the future. So that was something we proposed early on, because we did not want this to be Ochsner driving the situation. We wanted to be doing this together, and I think you'll hear in the structure that is certainly the situation. We also want to be focused on expanding care and offerings to patients in North Louisiana. I think there's significant opportunity for LSU and Ochsner to work together to expand clinical offerings to patients in North Louisiana and to build more services in that area. Another reason Ochsner is extremely excited about this relationship is our opportunity to build academic programs together, to potentially expand the medical school in conjunction with LSU over the next several years. There's real opportunities and synergies to have our research capabilities work together, because there's such depth in the research capabilities in LSU Shreveport. So our physicians are very excited about that situation. We know that there's been challenges over the past few years. I don't really make many guarantees, but I'll make one guarantee to you. We will make mistakes as we go through this, but I also guarantee you that we will fix them and we will move on, and we'll be a good partner at LSU, and we won't let you down. So I really look forward to working with LSU in this partnership. I know you're going to hear more about the structure, but I'm happy to take any questions if there's any from anyone. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Warner.
Thank you,
and
Warner.
Thank you for this partnership that we look forward to decades-long growth, expansion, and addressing the needs of Louisiana and northern Louisiana alongside of you guys. So thank you, Warner. From the governor's office, I know that Commissioner Darden is here, and Matthew Block. If you would care just to share, we appreciate what your leadership and these discussions, and if you'd like to share with us some of your thoughts about the partnership.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I'm Jay Darden, the Commissioner of Administration.
I can tell you that putting aside the fiscal cliff, which we have now solved, this particular issue has occupied more time and energy and caused more frustration and consternation than anything else. But today it's exhilaration. This is really the beginning of a new beginning for healthcare in North Louisiana and medical education in North Louisiana. And we're very excited about this. The governor is committed to this new partnership, to this new arrangement. And we are as well in the Division of Administration. Matthew and I have worked closely with the folks from Ochsner, with the folks from LSU, with the folks from the medical school in Shreveport, as well as BRF, to make certain that we confected an agreement, and I say agreement loosely because it's a lot of agreements. You've got a lot of documents that are involved in this, but an agreement that was going to be reasonable and fair in terminating the relationship with BRF, but at the same time establishing a relationship going forward that is going to work and it is going to be productive for the state and productive for the medical students in North Louisiana and for the people of North Louisiana who are so dependent upon this hospital for care. The commitment that is being made by all the parties involved is going to ensure that medical education is going to flourish and thrive in Shreveport and in the ancillary locations where the medical students go, and that the quality of care that is provided in North Louisiana is going to be tremendous. And not only in Shreveport, but also in Monroe, and both of these partnership relationships. The structure, as Warner said, is very complex. There are a lot of documents necessary to end the relationship and to set up the structure that's been created. But it is a true 50-50 partnership governed by a board that's equally divided between LSU and Ochsner, with a structure for resolving disputes that we think is much better than what we've seen in the past. And we're very optimistic and encouraged by these agreements. I ask for your support, and I want to take this opportunity to thank all of those who've been involved in these negotiations. They've been difficult negotiations, they've been tough, but they've also resulted in a very fair and equitable arrangement that is going to accomplish what all of us in this room want to see happen. So thanks to all those who've been involved, and I ask you for your support today as we embark on this new relationship. And I too am happy to answer any questions as you get into the details of the structure.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Matthew Block, good morning.
Thanks for allowing me to be with you. I just want to add a couple of things on the governor's behalf. One of the governor's primary reasons for running for governor, one of his goals as governor, was to improve healthcare outcomes in this state. It's why one of the very first things he did as governor was to expand Medicaid in this state, and it's why we and a lot of the people that are at this table in front of you and in this audience behind you, or in front of you behind me, have spent so much time on this partnership, because there were some significant problems with this partnership that we faced and had been in place for a long time before January 2016, and it's issues that we have been trying to resolve over the last 2.5 years. So we realized sometime last year that we needed to have some fundamental changes in this partnership, in the structure, in the financing, and just in the relationship. We spent a lot of time doing that. A lot of the people in this room have spent a lot of time working to get that right, and I think we have. It's not perfect. As Mr. Thomas said, there'll be mistakes that we all make along the way here, and we have had some bumps and bruises along the way to get to today. But I think we've come to a place where, for the first time in a long time, there's going to be a true partnership between the medical school and the hospital system in North Louisiana to make sure that they work together, because they are, in perhaps a different way than any other partnership in this state, they need to work together because they are interdependent upon one another. And one can't work without the other. And that's why this was devised as a 50-50 partnership. It's why the governance is established the way it is. And we think that this is something that both in the short term and the long term, this is something that we are building, something that you can be proud of as a board, that the state can be proud of, and most importantly, the people in North Louisiana can be proud of, because it will provide for better healthcare opportunities, and a renewed commitment to the medical school in Shreveport, which was always the governor's goal in these negotiations from the beginning. So I too, like everyone else before, want to thank everyone's involvement in this process. It's been exhaustive. It's, as President Alexander said, it has been almost an everyday process for us for a long time. It's been a lot of work, but I think the work has been worth it to get where we are today. So thank you very much. If you have questions as a board, or even after today, if there are things that you have concerns or questions about, please call on any of us, and we'll make sure to answer any concerns or questions you might have. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate you being here today.
Chancellor Ghali, would you, from the medical school's perspective, the optimism that's up there is refreshing, and as we go forward with our new partner.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to begin my remarks today by first thanking Governor Edwards, Commissioner Darden, the esteemed members of this LSU Board of Supervisors, President Alexander and his team, Mr. Thomas, Mr. November, the entire Ochsner team that's been working with our team, as well as my LSU Health Science Center Shreveport teams in both Shreveport and in Monroe for their leadership and support to bring this important day to fruition. I'm pretty happy about this. As many of you will recall, a little more than a year ago, the LSU Health Science Center in Shreveport was in a pretty dire situation. Over this past year, we have worked to forge a new future for our Health Science Center and North Louisiana in collaboration with the new partner, the Ochsner Health System. We have created a dynamic and what I believe to be a novel model that will support our goals to grow the medical school, advance the education and training for health professions, and expand research opportunities. The new model, in my mind, provides critical alignment between the Health Science Center and our partner for shared success. And shared success is what I think is critical. This is an exciting moment in the esteemed history of LSU and our Health Science Center in Shreveport. As Chancellor, I fully anticipate greater success in fulfilling our threefold tripartite mission of education, research, and clinical excellence. I, as Chancellor, support this, and at this point, I'm pleased and enthusiastic to request your approval in support of our new hospital and clinical partnership, the Ochsner LSU Health System. Thank you, President Alexander.
Okay. Thank you, Chancellor Ghali. Our team, Pat Sider's here. Pat, if you want to come up and take any questions prior to moving this forward, our team is here to answer any questions regarding this complicated but what I feel like is a very, very good partnership going forward with Ochsner.
Thank you, President Alexander. I feel a little overwhelmed following all these esteemed people. I'm just a lawyer. I just write down what people want to do. And so the one thing I think that's been more apparent to me than anything over the course of this past year is that academic medicine is incredibly complex. It is, there are two sides to the overall enterprise. You have the academic side and you have the clinical side. And on the academic side, you have the goals that Dr. Ghali articulated: medical education and training, research, and clinical care. But then at the same time, you have the clinical side where the physicians and the hospitals are working together to create an excellent clinical environment. And that is important not only for the patients, but it's important for our residents and our students. I think I heard, I think it was Dr. Townsend who referred one time to the hospitals as the clinical classrooms, which I think is really, really important from LSU's perspective, that we understand that those hospitals function as an academic setting for our residents and our students and our faculty. So with that in mind, The two things that I really heard starting close to a year ago now that both Ochsner and LSU wanted to accomplish were mission alignment and then clinical and financial integration. So all those documents that you see on the website and are available for public consumption are all dedicated to really accomplishing those two things. With respect to mission alignment, as I said, there's really two pieces to success here, one being academic and one being clinical. So the overarching document that you see that defines this partnership is referred to as the Academic and Clinical Collaboration Agreement. So that's the goal, academic and clinical collaboration. With respect to mission alignment, of course, LSU has its mission. Ochsner has its mission, but it was very important to the authors of these documents that we define the shared mission. And the shared mission of Ochsner and LSU is to work together in a collaborative and integrated manner to improve and expand medical education and research, and to improve access and the provision of quality medical care in North Louisiana by bringing together the best of both organizations. It may sound a little high-minded, but I think it's a piece that's absolutely fundamental. And if both our organizations are committed to that, they will be successful. The documents hopefully won't even have to be referred to again, because that is the linchpin of having a successful operation. As far as clinical and financial integration, again, the 50-50 deal is very important. Ochsner and LSU working together on the physician side, and Ochsner and LSU working together on the hospital side, and most importantly, the hospitals and the physicians working together. Anybody who's around healthcare understands that that's the way it has to be done in order to improve quality and to become cost effective. I mean, the physicians control most of the healthcare dollars. And so all the money that the hospitals have to spend, to a large extent, are controlled by the physician spend. And so if those two entities aren't working together and aren't communicating and aren't collaborating, it's just not going to work. So we have, again, created a 50-50 structure with governance. I don't know, I did have a little slide. I don't know if it could be put up there with the there we go, okay. I don't know if, can you see that? I don't know, it's a little light. But in any event, this is a very simple explanation of the complex relationship between Ochsner and LSU, but I think the fundamental thing is to look over here on the left side, you see LSU, and on the right side, you see the joint venture, but there's a couple key lines in there, and to me, the key line is, how's it work? Got it, I'll get this to work. There we go. This line right there. This is the Health Science Center. This is the joint venture.
Excuse me, would you mind, we can't see that.
Yeah, they can't see the red line.
Would you mind
They
describing?
can't see the red line on the page.
We can't see what you're doing. Would you
Oh,
mind
okay.
describing the line?
Okay, the line is box on the left says LSU, go straight down, it says the Academic Medical Center. Do you see that line right there? That is the line that I'm talking about that to me is absolutely key. It's that collaboration between the Health Science Center and the joint venture. And then the line going from this Health Science Center down to the physician side. Those lines don't exist in the current relationship up there, and I think they've been lacking. And so all those documents that you see are really designed to facilitate those relationships and to really strengthen those lines, those collaborative, cooperative communication avenues. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions if you've got specifics. Hopefully, all along this process, we've done our best to keep the board apprised as we've made progress. I hope you feel like that you've been well informed on the documents as they've been under development and had an opportunity to review them since they've been posted with the agenda. But again, I'm more than happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about specifics.
Thank you, Pat, and thank everyone for your comments. I'd like to open up the floor now for questions. One of the questions I have is, what is the plan for monitoring the partnership to ensure that we're meeting our mission of providing outstanding medical education to our students and quality patient care for the citizens of North Louisiana? Help us understand what that process might look like.
Well, I think you've got the folks in the room who are sitting in the chairs that will be responsible for that right now, and that's Dr. Ghali and his team, Commissioner Darden, Matthew Block, and their team. The state obviously is one of the documents is the CEA. The state is responsible for significant funding for this partnership, and so they have a role in monitoring and oversight. But certainly LSU has the responsibility to make sure that this is beneficial for the students and the residents. And you know, the metrics that the Health Science Center looks at sometimes are different from the metrics that the hospitals would look at. The hospitals are, you know, obviously concerned about efficiencies, cost effectiveness, that sort of stuff. The Health Science Center is concerned about, are we getting the best and brightest students? Are we creating the best environment for them to learn? Are they having access to the best equipment and the best opportunities to learn on the latest technology? Those are things that Dr. Ghali, the dean, Dr. Lewis is over there. That's their responsibility, and as I think I've heard Dr. Ghali articulate, he's very excited about the opportunity to assure that that's actually occurring in this partnership.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Absolutely. Yes, Ms. Warner.
And this might be more toward Dr. Ghali, Pat, but I'm just curious, to what degree have we spent time, has LSU spent time with the faculty and doctors to make sure that they feel, you know, they are fully on board, they've been brought into this process, and you know, do they have full input and buy-in? Because our success is dependent on the spirit that we move forward in the care with our faculty, our doctors, and I'm just curious kind of what that process has been like, Dr. Ghali.
Yes, Ms. Warner, I can answer that. We've had fairly exhaustive meetings with department heads and with program directors. The Ochsner Health System came in several months ago and had very systematic and very deliberate meetings along with Dr. Lewis and Dr. Fox, our dean and vice chancellor of clinical affairs on the LSU side, with each individual department chair and representatives, not just the chairs, but representatives from each of the clinical departments to go through what this process would include and what this joint venture would include. And so yes, we have buy-in from the faculty, and we're looking forward, once the board approves it, to have a larger meeting with the general faculty to discuss more of the specifics of it.
Pat, well, one, I would just thank everybody who's been involved in this. I know the time and effort and work that has gone into this, and appreciate how the board has been kept up to date as this works through. So thank you to everybody who's been involved. A great job. Can you just comment on the termination with BRF? Or are we anticipating any problems with collecting the payments that are due?
We're not anticipating any problems. The closing will occur on either September 30th or October 1st, depending on how you want to, probably October 1st. That's when the money will actually change hands. But we are expecting to be fully paid, Health Science Center to be fully paid for the outstanding debts from BRF, other than some obligations that the joint venture will be assuming that are factored into this fiscal year budget, the state's fiscal year budget. So the joint venture is assuming some debt obligations of BRF, but it's anticipated that the money needed to pay those obligations is included in the state's budget for this fiscal year. So Mr. November and many others have spent long hours figuring all that out, along with Jeff Reynolds, since he's been with LSU. Sure.
So just to make a comment about Oxford's been negotiating with BRF to make sure the exit goes smoothly, over the past several months, and we've had hours and hours of discussions with them. We've really helped to negotiate the exit. All of those documents have been reviewed by LSU, and we expect no issues either with the payments or no issues with kind of the exit agreements being signed and moving forward. So I think it's been a been a collaborative process, and I think they've worked well with us to make sure it's a smooth transition for Oxford to work with LSU, Shreveport, but also for BRF to transition out of their role as well. So,
with that in mind, can you all break down for us LSU's financial obligation, if any, at closing?
Most of the money's coming to us.
Okay.
Jeff, I don't know if you want to speak to that. There is some settlement of some claims that are currently in arbitration with BRF, but that's $1 million that they've agreed to accept in settlement of those claims. Otherwise, the money that will be flowing at the closing will be flowing from the joint venture, from the joint venture to, and BRF to LSU. Anything to add?
I represent the 4th Congressional District, live in Shreveport, along with representing the district with Ms. Jones. I'd just like to publicly say thank the governor and administration. I know he's personally been involved in getting us to this point, and I'd like to thank Dr. Golly and Mr. Thomas and staff with Oshner's, and of course our President Alexander, and our counsel, Tom Skinner, Matthew Block, as others have been worked, I know, for a year on this, and I have some appreciation for the work that they've done. We're really excited in Shreveport and North Louisiana. This is such an important entity for our area and for the state, the teaching hospital and safety net hospital and the med school, what it means to our state and our area, and it's such an economic engine. And so I appreciate all the efforts, and we're excited and looking forward to the improvements, the changes, and the investment that we're anticipating, and I know I'm confident will take place. So I want to thank y'all for that. I'd like to just ask if you could, and we're excited about having Oshner's coming in, adding the energy, the management, all the resources. What could you just give me a brief, or give us just a brief outline? There are a lot of deferred maintenance needs for our hospital that have, because of state funding, lack of state funding, so forth, over the past several years. So, and there are also programs that I know that I think we probably need to be able to take care of with the hospital that we're not able to. So, could someone, Mr. Thomas, or address what the investment side of this?
Mr. Brown, as you know, our health science center has an estimated deferred maintenance of the hospital and the health science center as a whole. The hospital, actually, specifically around $150 million has been the estimate. But there is money that's been set aside by Oshner to help with that. I think either Pete or Warner can address.
Sure. So basically, in the transaction, we've allocated well north of $20 million per year, just specifically for capital and deferred maintenance. We continue to do an assessment of equipment, because besides the deferred maintenance from a building perspective, there's much of the equipment is outdated. So we've actually engaged GE, who's kind of come in to help evaluate the equipment and go through that, so we can figure out what purchases will be needed there. But we will, as part of this process, also be upgrading equipment, working the deferred maintenance in the building structure. It's not going to be done the first year. It's going to be done over multiple years. But that is certainly allocated. There's funds allocated in the agreements and in the financial projections of the joint venture to fund those types of things.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
And I think
Absolutely.
that's part of why it's important to have a 10-year minimum of a 10-year term on this, because they're making a significant investment, and this is going to help improve the structure of this, as you say, the safety net hospital.
Supervisor Lockett, you have a question?
Yes. Help me understand, as managing partners in the 50-50 agreement with LSU, mostly on operations of the hospital and physicians groups, is LSU getting a fair deal on the management fees?
So we actually have had a long discussion about this, and actually in questions that came from the JLCB, there was a question about that, and we've looked at the management fee is 3%. We've looked at actually lots of different management fees for different healthcare institutions. They range upwards of 12 to 13%, depending upon the type of entity that actually has a management fee. We thought 3% was fair. It's actually also less than what we charge our internal organization at Ochsner. It's less than our internal allocation of overhead to our own entities within Ochsner. So we just felt, between looking at what happens externally, the fact that it's less than what we're doing internally was a fair approach to the management fee. I think the other comment I would make is that, I didn't go into it in the presentation. If you look at our supply chain at Ochsner is ranked in the top 20 in the country for supply chain services. Our revenue cycle, billing, and collections just received a national award from Huron Consulting for the work that we've done this year. Our IT programs continue to be ranked in the top, most wired for healthcare institutions. So it's not just about, okay, we're going to provide these services. I mean, these are top flight capabilities that we're bringing, that we have a long track record, and it's the same services and capabilities we use in our own organizations. We're not subbing any of this out to other organizations. We're going to be doing this ourselves, and it'll be the same service that we provide to any Ochsner organization in our system.
Is Ochsner making a profit on any of the fees?
There's, it's based off of our cost. There is, a slight markup, but it's, once again, it is not, it's less than what we're charging ourselves in the organization. So, but we haven't done activity-based costing across the whole organization, but we've looked at it from a market perspective. We've looked at it from what we charge ourselves, and I'm sure in some there may be some profit, and some there's probably some loss. It depends on time that we spend. I can tell you, when we do the conversion to our IT system, we'll have hundreds of people there running the conversion, and we're not going to look at additional costs for that. We're just putting it into our overall fee that we charge. So we'll continue to monitor it. I mean, I think that's the great thing about having a 50-50 board, is essentially it'll be something that can be monitored on an ongoing basis, and if it's something that we need to talk about and adjust, then we'll look at that. So, but we think, as far as a starting point and where we are, we think it's fair and it makes sense, and it certainly meets any external benchmark as far as management fees.
Has there been any talk of increasing clinical training opportunities and thus class size?
Yes, ma'am, there has been. And, this was one of my goals when I first became chancellor, was to expand in some of these areas. And certainly the vision that Ochsner has is similar to ours, and actually dovetails quite nicely. We have a very structured plan to hopefully increase our class size over the next few years up to 200 in the class in the School of Medicine. But I will tell you, we're also looking at other academic programs as well, both in the graduate school and as well as the School of Allied Health. So to answer your question, yes, we're looking at that very, very carefully and very thoughtfully.
Great, good to hear. So how many students do you have now? You said you plan to grow to 200?
Right. So we're looking we're in the mid 130s right now.
Okay.
And we're working very carefully with Provost Eggerstadt to look at the ways to expand the class size within accreditation standards. As you know, when we expand the class size, we have to look at the physical structure of our facility and make sure that we have the capacity to do that, and also the clinical rotations that the students will need to be on as well. Are we satisfying those needs? And so, yes.
Well, great. Well, I look forward to seeing that growth over the next few years, as I know we all do.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, Chancellor Ghali, I know your passion for medical education, top-notch patient care, and obviously for LSU as well, so it makes me feel good knowing that you are happy with the proposed agreement. I'm hopeful that if the board approves this partnership, it will allow you to do more of what you're good at, of what you're best at, and to grow medical education opportunities in North Louisiana. So thank you, Dr. Ghali.
Thank you, ma'am.
Supervisor.
Just following up on something Wayne said a little while ago. As a brand new member of the board, most of us probably assume we're selected to help the offensive coordinator call plays on Saturday night. But the reality is you learn how much there is to LSU and to these kinds of issues. And I have been astounded and blown away and impressed with how hard Dr. Alexander, Liz Sumrall, Tom, and different ones on the LSU staff, Dr. Ghali, your staff has been phenomenal, obviously. The Ochsner people, the governor's folks, Mr. Block and Commissioner Darden, just want y'all to know how much we all appreciate it and how hard we know that y'all have worked and how successful and how good we think this is going to be for the students and for the community, and that's what it's all about. So thank you. I think y'all have done a wonderful job.
Thank you, sir. For each one of us, there's at least 50 others that aren't here that have really worked day and night to make this happen. And I can guarantee you that if I wasn't telling you that this was the thing to do, then I would be concerned. This is the thing to do. And thank you for your support, President Alexander, and that of the Board of Supervisors.
Ms. Jones,
I'm sorry, Supervisor Brown?
If there's not any further discussion, I'd like to make the motion.
I think.
I was sorry. Make them,
Oh, okay.
They beat me to it, and that's fine.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Good.
Is there a second? Okay, great. All opposed? I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. This concludes the business of the Healthcare Committee. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Get a second? We are adjourned, Mr. Chairman. The Healthcare Committee has concluded our meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Jones. Mr. Armentor, would you please convene the Academic Affairs Committee meeting?
I hereby call the Academic Committee to order. Stephanie, please call the roll.
Mr. Armentor,
Here.
Mr. Moore, Mr. Anderson,
Here.
Mr. Lockett,
Here.
Ms. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Chair, you have quorum.
I call on Provost Stacey Haney to present the items for consideration, please. Provost?
We still have meetings going on. Please, let's maintain decorum. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Armentor.
There are just two items. One is to change the name of the School of Library and Information Sciences to the School of Information Studies to reflect the broader role, scope, and function of our school, which is no longer simply focused on producing librarians, but much more broadly on the collection and dissemination and understanding of information much more broadly. And then the second is a request to continue the Red River Watershed Management Institute from LSU Shreveport, and this has been a really vital and productive institute for that, and this is its regular perfunctory renewal.
Thank you, Provost. Are there any questions on these items? Is there a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
Any opposition? Without opposition, the resolutions are approved. Mr. Chairman, this concludes the business of the Academic Committee. Is there a motion to conclude the Academic Committee?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any opposition? Without opposition, the committee is adjourned. Mr. Chairman, the Academic Committee has concluded their meeting.
And we lost our chairman, so.
Lake, take over.
Acting chairman.
I'm sure that the chairman would want us to go ahead and call to order the, the Finance, Infrastructure, and Core Development Committee. So Stephanie, if you would, please call the roll.
Mr. Chatelain?
Here.
Ms. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Lockett?
Here.
Mr. Mallett?
Here.
Mr. Moore? Mr. Williams? Chair, you have quorum.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. We have 3 items on the agenda for the Finance Committee. One is an action item, and the other 2 are updates. I'm going to kind of move the agenda around a little bit, and Dan would ask you to start out, if you would, with the recommendation on the budget approval. I think that'll budget item. If that's okay, that'll kind of help us as we have the other discussion.
Sure.
So we'll look at the recommendation for the operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chatelain and members of the board. This item, as Mr. Chatelain noted, is a request to approve the university's fiscal year 19 operating budget. This slide shows the operating budget development cycle, just for your information. As you may remember, at the June meeting, you approved the fiscal year 19 appropriation received by the university following legislative action on the state budget, as well as student fee increases for this academic year. Since then, all of our campuses have been working through the final decision-making processes to firm up fiscal year 19 revenues and expenses, which are reflected in the fiscal year 19 operating budget recommendation you have before you. Pursuant to Board of Regents guidelines, the university's operating budgets were submitted to the board on September 3rd with a caveat that they are being submitted contingent upon action by you at this meeting. The Board of Regents will hold their annual hearings on the university system operating budgets at their meeting on September 25th. As a point of reference, at next month's meeting, we will be seeking your approval for the university's fiscal year 20 operating budget request. Before we get into the details of the fiscal year 19 budget, it might be helpful to summarize some of the main cost drivers, pressures, and priorities that we consider in putting together an operating budget each year, as well as some context, as well as where we stand regarding our peers regionally and nationally. The first pressure is our mandated costs. Total mandated costs are estimated to be just under $280 million university-wide in fiscal year 2019, an increase of almost $10 million from fiscal year 18. Mandated costs are just that. They're expenses that the university is required to pay regardless of budgetary or revenue condition. They include retirement and other benefit costs, classified staff salary increases, and other chargebacks from the state. Retirement system contributions alone account for $139 million, or almost 50% of that total. Of that amount, just under 90%, 86% goes to pay down the unfunded accrued liability of the state's retirement systems. Unfunded accrued liability, if you're not familiar with that term, are the unfunded current and future pension obligations that for participants that exist due to past underfunding of the state's retirement systems. In other words, 90 cents out of every dollar that the university sends to TRSL and lasers goes to pay down past debt.
And Dan, when is that debt paid off? It's
2031, 32, somewhere in there.
Amazing.
Other cost drivers and priorities include faculty and staff salary competitiveness, and we had discussed back in June how far we are behind our peers on that, the need to invest in institutional student aid to attract and retain students and remain competitive, deferred facilities maintenance, replacing a beyond end-of-life IT infrastructure, and attempting to selectively address the most significant and compelling other strategic priorities the university has. The next few slides just again provide some context on where LSU campuses stand in terms of the funding they have relative to their peers regionally and nationally, as well as compared to the past. As noted on these first 2 slides, the flagship was well below both their SEC and national peer averages in FY 2008 in terms of state funding per student, and it's dropped precipitously since then.
when we look at all of our SEC peers together, just to show in context where we stand regionally, you can see that LSU is at the absolute bottom in terms of both state appropriations per FTE student as well as state appropriations plus tuition and fee revenue per student. Next two charts show LSU Shreveport and LSU Alexandria. Again, similar patterns emerge in terms of a declining investment in both institutions, as the same as with LSU Eunice. Now getting into the actual operating budget for fiscal year 2019. This first slide shows you the total revenues that the university has budgeted for expenditure in 2019. Totals $2.43 billion. It includes both unrestricted and restricted revenues. The three largest sources, as you can see, are gifts, grants, and contracts, which are, for example, faculty research funds, which is a restricted source of revenue, student tuition and fees, and the state general fund. In total, these three sources make up 2/3 of the university's budgeted revenues. This slide breaks out the total operating budgets for each of the campuses to give you a sense of how both unrestricted and restricted revenues are distributed among each of the campuses. Just as a reminder, restricted revenues are just that. They are revenues that we receive for specific purposes and can only be spent on those purposes, such as faculty research awards and similar kinds of activities. Unrestricted are those revenues that really go to support the day-to-day operations of the state, and those are largely state appropriations and tuition revenues. As noted, each of the LSU campuses has a somewhat different revenue mix based on its mission and scope. As you can see, the health science centers in Pennington tend to be a little heavier on the restricted, given their missions, whereas the LSU and the other campuses tend to be heavier on the unrestricted. The next slide takes you from where we were last year and the changes that we have to our operating budget between FY18 and FY19. As you saw, the total operating budget for fiscal year 19 is $1.03 billion. This is the budget that is appropriated by the legislature each year, and it represents a decrease of $7.6 million or 0.7% from the final FY18 budget. This decrease, and I want to emphasize this, is due primarily to a couple of things. One, negative state general fund adjustments that were associated with one-time appropriations that the university received in fiscal year 18. That is, they were for a specific purpose in fiscal year 18, and they went away. It goes away this year. That was at LSU, the Ag Center and Health Science Center in New Orleans, and reductions in various statutory dedicated fund appropriations for fiscal year 19. That would include the SELF fund, the tobacco tax healthcare fund, and overcollections fund. Again, just some of the statutory dedicated funds. Our state general fund appropriation, again, as was noted earlier, remained essentially steady. This next chart provides a breakout of the university's total budgeted unrestricted revenues. As noted, tuition and fees represent more than half of the total, with state funding representing just over 40%. This slide shows the relative proportion of unrestricted budgeted expenditures by category and object of expenditure. Colleges and universities are very people-intensive operations, and you can see that's certainly the case for our university, where almost 3/4 of the unrestricted budget goes to personnel-related expenses, as salaries and benefits, primarily. The other two large expenditures are in other charges, of which a large portion of that are our scholarship expenses and operating expenses, which include utilities, and professional services such as those associated with architects, consultants, and legal services. This last chart shows the percentage of, or how our unrestricted budgeted expenditures are distributed by function. These categories are common across all institutions nationally. If you went to another state, you would see the same terminology. As noted, just under half of the university's unrestricted budget goes toward our primary missions of instruction, of teaching, research, and service. The other half goes to support functions, including libraries, which would be included in the category academic support, student support services such as tutoring and advising, student financial aid, facilities maintenance and groundkeeping, and payroll, IT, and financial operations, and other back office functions. That concludes my presentation on the FY19 operating budget recommendation. I'd be happy to take any questions and would ask for your favorable consideration.
Dan, before we open for questions, would you remind everybody what is built in terms of merit increases from a faculty standpoint?
Sure. At the flagship, there are 3% on average merit increases. LSU E and LSU A also have 3% merit increases. The Health Science Center at Shreveport has not yet made a determination, and those were the campus. Oh, and the Ag Center is doing 3% as well.
All right, thank you. Questions? Got one coming.
Okay.
I have one in the meantime. Is there any differences from the last year's unrestricted budget? Is there two or three things different that y'all may have changed, kind of point out, or is it pretty much the same from last year?
Well, I would say probably at least for the flagship campus, one of the bigger increases would be in student aid. We had a fairly significant increase in institutionally funded student aid this year, which is, again, will be reflected in our success in enrollment this year too. So, but we did see a
Dan, that was about $9 million?
No, it was about 18 million.
18 million total, yes.
So that was probably the largest increase.
So I have a question. At the last meeting, we had a very robust discussion about increasing fees to generate revenue to fund this budget. Part of that, and I wanted to make sure I was right, so I'm looking at the resolution from last time. Because we increased fees, we changed the hardship percentage.
Yes.
Percentage of the fees set aside for hardships from 5% to 15%.
Yes, sir.
But another very important part of that was that we would engage a consultant whose scope would include reviewing everything, tuition, fee, the aid structure, and seek out innovative ways to generate revenue. As of that meeting in June, which is now 3 months ago, our resolution required that consultant report back to the board with their findings on how we might explore creative ways to generate revenue that doesn't involve increasing the cost of attending LSU for families. How is that going? It's been 3 months now, so the consultant has 9 more months left to go. How's that process coming along? Have we identified or even hired a consultant?
We have.
Where are we in that process?
In that process,
we are now, hold on, we are now 3 months into the 12 months that this was supposed to be completed.
Yes, sir. In fact, on the last presentation, we're going to go into great detail on how we have responded to that resolution, but I can give you a real, which
is not mine. Go ahead.
And so on the tuition fee and aid structure, we have a consultant already under contract that will be doing a deeper dive into the issue of tuition fee and aid. And we will have some results later, I would imagine later this fall, that we can begin to report back. And on the question of the revenue generation, we have engaged a consultant on one aspect of that at this point, to look at the topic of TIF districts and what might be possible there. We've talked about that with regard to facilities in the past, and but that's at a very early stage right now.
I am concerned because that's not necessarily consistent with what we talked about in June. To rely on a consultant that the university has already engaged was not the spirit of what, we had a very robust discussion about the seriousness of what the board did in increasing that cost. And a key part of that, at least for me and for everyone else on the board who voted in favor of the resolution, we wanted a consultant who would be engaged, not someone already doing something already that is not the brand new thing that we contemplated. But again, what we voted on and asked is that a consultant be engaged for the specific purpose of looking at this, I hate to use the word, holistically, to to come up with a global answer. And so I will, speaking personally, I'm disappointed to hear that that is the status of things, because I, given what we voted on and agreed upon, was under a different impression. And so I welcome understanding how we're going to move forward more consistent with what we talked about, which is engaging one group. I think the problem we had before is if we attack this piecemeal, we won't have a plan that can give us relief across the board. So I'd like to understand, I guess, what we're going to do from here to accomplish that, because it sounds like you're kind of going a different direction.
Well, on the tuition and fee and aid structure piece, this would be a new engagement. It's not somebody that, I mean, this is a group that has significant experience with nationally and looking at how individual institutions compare to other institutions, and are there improvements you can make? How do you market to students? How do you ensure that you're affordable? And so that is what this consultant is going to be doing. The other issue.
I thought this was. I thought you just said. Maybe I misunderstood. I thought you just said this was someone that was already in place.
They are, but this would be on top of what they're currently doing at the institution.
So this is a consultant that was already in place and working for the school even before we had our last discussion, and not, instead of going out and finding a new consultant to address overall revenue concerns, we're going to just simply, your proposal is that instead we just add to the responsibilities of someone who's already on campus doing some of it.
It seemed like that was the most expeditious way to get the results that the board was looking for. It is, again, this is a group that this is what they do, and again, not wanting to wanting to be responsive to the board's desire to get results back on these questions. We are that was, again, appeared to be the most expeditious.
And Mr. Williams, I'll add, we deferred, moved the agenda around a little bit. We have an action, or not an action item, but a report coming, which will dive a little bit deeper into looking at these issues and kind of forecasting what the challenges are ahead. So we originally were going to start off with that. I asked Dan to take this item first, but we're going to come back and have a deeper discussion on that in just a second.
He's telling me to be quiet for now.
Well, in a very nice way.
I'll go with that.
Any other questions on this specific action item in terms of the budget approval? Not, would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, sir. Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Well, Dan, with that, we'll go back, and why don't we move into, we'll move supplier diversity to the last item, and so why don't we go ahead and address the question and kind of, I think what we wanted to do here was kind of, one, take a fresh look at you know, so the fee resolution and what that's generating, what cost of attendance is, help to frame and kind of set the discussion a little bit more to make sure that as we look at creative ways to generate revenue, that we're targeting what those right areas are. And so I think what we've tried to do with this presentation is take a deeper dive, make sure that the board fully understands where we are today, also understands the challenges of what we're going to have over the next few years, because a lot of this discussion and a lot of what we need to do as we decide, you know, how to go forward in terms of raising revenue and looking, is trying to determine what we want LSU, how much do we aspire to accomplish over the next few years. Are we looking just to balance the budget, or are we looking to really make up ground and grow and invest more? And so I think Dan's got a lot of information here that'll help us all be aware of what those challenges are and what those challenges will be, and then we can have some deeper discussions about how we try to solve those issues. So, Dan, if you'll move through this for us, I will, because I know there'll be a lot of questions.
Yeah. As Mr. Williams noted, we had a very lengthy and substantive discussion of on fees, affordability, and budget needs in June. This presentation is to come back and provide you with an update and some additional context on where we are with regard to this. But more importantly, I think what this all means in terms of the implications for our future as a flagship university. The focus for this presentation, I want to note, is on the flagship here in Baton Rouge, but the picture that you will see painted is in this presentation can more or less be painted at each of our campuses across the system. This, again, as Mr. Williams was just referring to, was the fee resolution from June. Included three main parts, which was A, setting aside 15% of the fee revenue for hardship waivers. Secondly, contracting consultant to review tuition fee and aid structure, and also seeking out contracting consultant to seek out innovative ways to generate revenue for the future. You may remember from our discussion in June, there is already on the books an existing state mandate to provide financial assistance, hardship waivers for those institutions that use this authority up to no less than 5% of revenues realized by the institution, and that has been in place since the fee was first passed. The second piece of this is the expansion due to the resolution that you passed, which was raise that from up to 15%, which was an additional 10% of the revenues. Under the standing allocation methodology that we have had in place, we're going to cover a few topics and try to cover them in a fairly non-technical manner. The standard methodology for those students who had previously and currently are receiving the initial 5%, I guess I would say, would be those undergraduate full-time resident students who have a federally defined effective family contribution of 0 and Pell Grant eligible, that they were awarded an exemption valued at 60% of the student excellence fee. Now, the EFC, just to be clear, is a federally set measure of a family's financial strength that takes into account income, other assets, family size, and the number of college at the time. And it is a federally set formula. Every institution in the country uses it to come up with this methodology. In fall of 18, those students who are currently in that band there were just under 2,200 students that were awarded, and approximately 2.2 million has been allocated for those students that fall within those categories. Just another point of information for the students in this group, the median family income for that group is just over $15,000. So again, it is the neediest of the needy in terms of our students. Yes, sir.
Mr. Lozelle, the 2.2, what percentage is that? I know we're not done yet, but I'm trying to get an idea of, in that 15%, how much of that 15% have we reached with this already?
5%, but this also includes money that had been budgeted since the implementation of the student excellence fee. So for this year, it was just the increment this year was just about $700,000.
And if I'm jumping ahead, Mr. Chatelain will tell me to be quiet again. But is there a plan to, how are we going to identify and help the other 10%?
Getting to that.
All right.
All right.
He's telling me to be quiet. He's telling me to be quiet. Thank you.
All right. The next piece of this is again, the expanded portion of that we were talking about, the next 10%. What we did then was to go to the next EFC band, which is those undergraduate full-time resident students who have an expected family contribution of $1 to $12,500 or just $12,499. They were awarded an exemption. Again, this is the next bracket up in terms of student need. Just under 3,500 students were awarded in fall of 2018 for that amount. Out of that amount, as you could see, it was 2,500 continuing students and just under 1,000 entering freshmen, and that resulted in an estimated $1.2 million being allocated to that group of students. The median family income, again, just to put it in perspective, for this group is just under $56,000. One of the questions that often comes up when we're talking about waivers and what the sticker price is for what students and their families pay to attend college is what's the actual net that we're going to pay after you factor in financial aid and other scholarship aid. Because our students who receive these hardship exemptions also receive a combination of TOPS, obviously they're all residents, Pell Grant, SEOG, which is another federal need-based program, the Pelican Promise, which is targeted to our most needy students as well, Go Grant, a state program, and then other merit scholarships and work-study funds. When you factor all of those aid sources, and again, that doesn't include loans, certainly. This is truly the scholarship aid. The average net tuition and fees for students who receive a hardship exemption is negative $2,200. Now, again, the way that happens is that this does not include the total cost of attendance, and we're going to get to that in some slides, but it gives you the balance that's left over is what these students use to apply to room and board, books, other living expenses that are part of their college education. When you look at all resident undergraduates, not just those who receive the hardship exemption, the average net tuition and fees for all of these resident undergraduates is about $1,600.
So, and just to be clear on that, I had the opportunity to actually testify on net tuition in Congress in 2003. This is a simple equation. What you do is you for residents, you collect all the tuition and fees in one pile, and then you subtract the state aid, grant aid, federal grant aid, and institutional grant aid to that student, and then you divide it by the per FTE, and you come up with the $1,604 annually. That's the remainder of the tuition and fee, not room and board, but of the tuition and fee. So that's the average left for each per FTE of our resident students in Louisiana. Tops all of it.
The next question might be, how do we compare to our peers when you start looking at net cost of attendance? When you look at the SEC, and I apologize for the small numbers here, but when you start with the total cost of attendance for a student, and that includes tuition and fees, room and board, books, related costs to be a college student, and again, that is something that's calculated by the federal government to ensure that there is consistency across institutions, and also in terms of figuring financial aid packages. As you can see, and this data refers to, it was from fiscal year 16 or academic year 15-16, and this looks at resident first-time, full-time freshmen only. We are fourth from the bottom in the SEC. So that is after you factor in the aid, the scholarship aid that our students receive, be it from state, federal, or institutional sources. We're down again, fourth from the bottom.
There is a consistent issue in this too, because LSU with TOPS, Georgia with Hope Scholarship, and Florida with Bright Scholars that has their own TOPS in both Georgia and Florida. So you see us three down on the low end of these charts because of the merit-based scholarship programs that these three states have.
Right. And just, for us, this is a very inclusive group of our freshmen. Just under 98% of our resident freshmen that year were included in this group. So again, it reflects a significant number of our students. When you start looking at net cost of attendance and you break into income brackets, like we were doing previously when we were talking about the hardship waiver, we also, I think, are very affordable and competitive. When you look at the first income bracket, that is students who have a family income of $0 to $30,000, when you factor what the net cost of attendance is for those for the students in that income bracket, LSU is dead last in terms of total cost, net cost of attendance. When you go up to the next bracket, 30,000 to 48,000, we are third from the bottom in the SEC. Again, about 98% of our freshman cohort is represented in the total group here. And then finally, when we go up then the next level, we are fourth from the bottom, again, compared to the rest of the SEC. So you see a very similar pattern as you start to go, not just overall, but across income brackets in terms of what our students actually pay after you, or what they're responsible for financially after you start back out the scholarship aid they receive.
Dan, this is the IPEDS number that we use on the net price, which does include factors of living conditions, which does include room and board.
Yes, it does. It does. Just again, some more peer comparisons so you could see how we compare when you look at net price. We are, whether you look at the SEC or you're looking at all four-year institutions across the country, we are relatively low in terms of all of those groups. Another thing that we look at is our earnings performance. That is, what do our students actually, once they've graduated and they gain employment, and this is really more focused on what the value of the degree, value of the education. This gives you a sense of where we compare relative to our peers. Again, number one in the SEC, and that includes Vanderbilt.
And this came out in Washington Monthly about a month ago.
Yes.
And this earnings performance rank takes into account beginning salaries, 10-year out salaries, averages, and it has an indebtedness component that gets into this performance rank. So when you factor in salaries and indebtedness, Washington Monthly's got us ranked first in the best in the SEC at performance and in this relatively complicated formula. and 8th among flagship universities in the United States, and 10 among the land grants, which there are about 82 of them nationwide. That's what this ranking shows.
In terms of, again, to get to the part of the resolution that was looking at tuition fee and aid structure, we have a number of engagements that are underway, as I had mentioned. One is looking at just our pricing and recruitment strategy. We've had this group under contract with us. We are now, again, student retention is a critical issue for us, not just attracting our students, but also retaining them. Have engaged a group to assist us in terms of monitoring our performance and identifying areas where potential areas of risk that we need to address. And then certainly as we get more into our online education, we are needing to look at our program structure and pricing strategy. And I don't know, Provost Haney, if you wanted to add anything about any of these.
No, I think that what's really critical is not just ensuring that your tuition and fee and aid structure is market-based, but also that you're bringing in the student, but you're also focused ensuring that the student succeeds. So this is comprehensively, and then of course as we build out our online infrastructure, we want to ensure that we are the first of the online programs we're launching are those that have the greatest immediate impact for scale. So again, when we're looking at revenue streams, those are the vital ones. So we've ensured that we've engaged the consultants to help us be as efficient and effective as we can be.
In terms of the next steps, as I was mentioning during the last item, we would propose to engage Ruffalo Noel Levitz to do an analysis of our position, price and value, but also as we're doing that, take a look at our tuition fee and aid structure relative to our student population, certainly, and our population of students that we tend to recruit and attract from, but also nationally to ensure that we are regionally and nationally to ensure that we are best practices. The next phase of the resolution focused on innovative revenue generation, and just to step back, there are a number of ways in which we can generate revenue, and these are not all inclusive, but these are certainly probably the most common approaches. Enrollment growth, obviously, as you grow enrollment, you grow revenue. Pricing changes, which we had a lengthy discussion on in June. The identification of new potential revenue streams. And then fourthly, the reallocation of existing revenues due to cost-saving measures and other efficiencies. Again, this isn't necessarily new revenue, but it is revenue that's freed up from existing budget uses that can be deployed toward other higher priorities. And we have certainly had a lot of experience with that. Just some related recent initiatives for those who may not be familiar, things that we have done to try to save on costs or look at additional revenues. Been a number of administrative consolidations that have taken place at the university, which I'll touch on in a bit. The GRAD Act autonomies. The GRAD Act, as you might remember, was in place for a number of years. That basically what that did was if you met certain performance targets, it allowed institutions to go up a certain amount in terms of tuition each year. That act is now sunset, but that GRAD Act also provided institutions who met certain operational performance thresholds the ability to secure quote-unquote autonomies from the state in various operational areas, and I'll touch on that in a little bit. In terms of some of the cost-saving measures that have been put in place, and this really grew out of the One LSU initiative of several years ago, consolidated 10 senior-level executive positions into 5, And then we consolidated as well 2 major budget units that had previously been separate into the flagship campus operations, and that would be the Law Center and the System Administration Office, which was located here. In terms of the autonomies that we have been able to benefit and take advantage of due to GRAD Act, there are 2 main ones. One is risk management autonomy. Previously, this campus at least, all campuses had to secure their insurance coverage from the State Office of Risk Management. What we found was we essentially were paying for the liabilities of other state operations, for State Highway Department, corrections, others that may have a higher risk profile necessarily than we do. And the other piece of that is that the state's risk management program was not designed for a college or university.
Because our graduation rate was higher than everybody else's and we had much better results, we had to wrestle these 2 things away from the state so we could save that money. And we're the only institution in the state that received these 2 authorities so we could save $28 million.
To date.
To date.
The other one, again, as mentioned here, is procurement autonomy. That was also significant in that it allows us to manage our procurement operations internally, which has a number of benefits. A, being able to secure more competitive pricing on certain goods and commodities, and also just engage in much more best practice procurement approaches. And again, as the President mentioned, between these 2 to date, we've saved about $28 million. So again, the question might come up, how do we compare in terms of just our overall fixed cost and administrative overhead? When you look, and again, this is just focused on the flagship, when you look at administrative cost and the measure of institutional support is, again, that's a national term, that's a terminology that is used by institutions nationally, but in short, that's basically your administrative overhead operations, managers and the various administrative offices that support the teaching, research, and public service missions of the university.
And this is administrative costs per FTE.
Well, there's 2 ways that we're looking at it here. One is administrative costs per FTE student to create a more normalized measure, and then also when you look at your total budget, what does that represent as a percent of the whole? And again, we're at the bottom, or right at near the bottom when you look at our SEC peers. And again, it's the most recent year information possible. When you look at our staffing, again, we are also relatively lean. For every student, essentially, we have 126 staff who fall into the managerial or management staff category, again, which is near the bottom relative to our SEC peers.
For those that are seeking greater efficiencies, this looks good on the efficiency scale, but it doesn't look good on a student scale, because those are people that could be helping our students that these other institutions have in place.
Well, and I think that's exactly right. I think in part what you're seeing is after several years of budget reductions and the institution making a conscious decision to disproportionately target reductions to the non-instructional side of the house or non-core mission side of the house. This is where you end up, and it has a direct impact on the ability to provide student services. Just a few more measures here. Core expenditures per student, this is everything other than hospital expenses and auxiliary operations such as athletics and student unions and residence halls. LSU is at the bottom of what we spend per student on combined instruction, research service, financial aid, and other services. What this means in terms of dollars is that when you look at our SEC peers, we are spending on average $300 million less each year as an institution compared to the rest of our peers.
Oh, we didn't put Vanderbilt on that list, but just in case people wanted to know, Vanderbilt's about $90,000 per student, per FTE.
Likewise, we're near the bottom with our SEC peers. Operating revenues, again, we covered this before, so I won't hit it again, but we are at the bottom there. And so, again, this is really, again, since our conversation in June was so pretty wide-ranging, we were focused on not just our current budget profile and our needs for this year, but again, thinking about what we're going to need for the future. And so in preparing for this, we thought it would be helpful for the board to look at a number of budget scenarios going out several years to see if, depending on what decisions could be made or might be made, what that means in terms of ongoing budget growth or budget changes.
And Dan, let me just pause there. I think Dan is telling us a story, if you would, as we get to this point, and we'll kind of give updates on where we are. But just to highlight, I think one he's showed us, and this is good information for every board member to have, is that LSU is an extreme value when it comes to the cost of attendance, the aid that is there, the earnings that our students achieve once they graduate. Two, we can tell everybody we're darn efficient, because if you look at all of our overhead costs, what we spend relative to our income on staff support and that sort of thing, we're about as efficient as we can get, and it's hard to save your way into greatness. So I think with those 2 points in mind, I think the next step is kind of looking out the next few years and try to say, all right, as we grow, what are the costs that are going to increase that we have to overcome, and what are those budget gaps that we need to start trying to solve with other revenue sources. So.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chatelain. There are a number of key cost drivers, and again, we were talking about cost drivers, and that when we were for the operating budget resolution, but there are a number of drivers that are assumed in these 4 scenarios that we're going to present to you that have a direct impact on our recurring budget needs. First is, we assume enrollment growth, and in terms of the enrollment growth that we are assuming on campus is that we are going to grow to just over 37,000 on campus by 2025. That doesn't include the planned growth for online, which is also planned to grow. In terms of our continued investment in institutional aid and IT modernization, as our enrollment grows, our scholarship needs are going to continue to grow as well. We're currently spending at the flagship, from an institutional standpoint, about $98 million a year on institutional aid, and that's for all students, not just undergraduate. Would include graduates as well. The IT modernization piece of this, and we'll certainly be talking to you more about this in the coming months as we get closer to finalizing our plans. Our current mainframe system that has operated all of our administrative systems, that would be HR, payroll, finance, all of our student systems, including registration, advising, and financial aid, and the like, has served this university well, but it's over 40 years old now, and we are at the point where the technology is no longer viable, and we are at risk as an institution to coming to a screeching halt in terms of our operations. So that is something that we're going to need to be
Dan, that migration is important for our new board members, yes, because we're migrating away from a 1959 Cobalt system that's being held together by duct tape, and it's so old the Russians can't get in it.
The mandated and other operating cost increases, we talked about mandated costs in the last resolution, but again, those historically speaking for this institution, it's about $130 million right now, and they tend to grow about $5 million a year regardless of what, again, largely driven by retirement and health insurance costs. And then our strategic priorities, which again, they include certainly at the top, faculty salary competitiveness, and we will want to continue to move toward that. So what I'm going to go through now and try to do it fairly efficiently is to go through 4 scenarios that look at different assumptions on these cost drivers, and to give you a sense of what some of these decisions can mean. And the other point I'd like to make is that these are really presented for discussion purposes only. They do not reflect necessarily where we're going to be, but they do reflect if you make certain decisions to achieve certain priorities, where you will end up.
Dan, on pointing out those projections are in line with just about every one of our campuses because these are mandated costs. For our smaller campuses, these projections may even be higher in terms of fixed cost growth. And for the Ag Center and others that don't have tuition or don't have the online possibility, that could help.
So the first scenario is one we would call the baseline scenario, and that is one that assumes that we do no further merit increases going forward beyond what we've done this year. We don't increase graduate assistant stipends, again for which again is a related priority, and we maintain our current 22-to-1 student-faculty ratio as we ramp up to the number in 2025. Again, if we do nothing other than that and increase our scholarships accordingly and have our mandated cost increases that I mentioned, and invest in our IT infrastructure, we grow approximately $165 million between now and the end of 2025. If you do what we would call our baseline plus scenario, which would add to what I just mentioned in the previous scenario, 3% annual merit salary increase and a 3% annual GA stipend, which is essentially what we pay to our graduate assistants for living expenses and the like, and continue to assume the 22-to-1 student-faculty ratio as we ramp up enrollment. We see an incremental change of about $283 million from where we are today. The third, the regional competitiveness, is what it would take for us. Again, we talked a lot about faculty salary competitiveness at the June board meeting. What would it take? And this looks at what would it take for the university to get its average faculty salary up to the SEC average in 4 years. And that would be approximately, it works out to about 3.3% a year. If we do that, the incremental change that we would require is just under $350 million. The fourth and final scenario is what we call the national flagship scenario, and that would be, in addition to everything else was included in the previous scenarios, what it would need for us over the next 4 years to get our average faculty salaries up to our national flagship average, which is about 4.4% a year. If we did that, the incremental change would be $383 million. So again, as you see, we go from, still not doing much of anything, but still having a fairly significant budgetary ramp up over this period of time just because of the costs that will continue to occur to, if we make strategic decisions in terms of what, where we might want to be as a flagship nationally or regionally and nationally, just certainly adds to the budget pressures. This just highlights for you or summarizes for you the various assumptions that went into each of those four projections. The next few scenarios that we'll provide, we overlay what-ifs in terms of fees. Again, just presented for discussion purposes only, but it presents to you, again, what we see just with fee increases. The first assumes that we would remain where we are in terms of fees as of right now, no further increases, and the growth would be due solely to our assumed enrollment growth through the end of this period. And in total, the incremental change in revenue would be about $170 million over that period of time. Again, that's no fee increase. The next one looks at what if we implemented a 5% fee increase in the next 2 years of our remaining fee autonomy to see where we would end up. That would add an incremental amount in total over the next several years. We would get up to, by FY 2025, about $208 million in incremental revenue. And we've overlaid these on each of the scenarios. So the last one looks at if we did a 10%. Again, this is just presented for modeling purposes only. What are we looking at? And that incremental change is just under $250 million. So as you see, as we're looking to the future, you know, there becomes a disconnect between our fee revenue potential. I mean, what potentially we could generate just in terms of fees, if from zero increase to a 10% as a scenario, and what each of these four scenarios result in, particularly the three, the baseline, the regional, and the national. So the final slide here, again, as we've talking about this, all of this has very critical implications for LSU's future state. And as the president mentioned, as I mentioned at the beginning, you know, you could take this picture and paint it. It would be the same picture more or less for each of our campuses. We're all facing the same cost pressures. We're all facing the same trade-offs and decisions. But certainly it raises the question, what do we want to be in the future? What kind of flagship institution do we want to be, and how do we get there, at least budgetarily? So again, what is our next steps? We will continue our focus on enrollment and retention, as Provost Haney mentioned. That's certainly within our control and our destiny. We'll continue the development of our online program, which again we're moving very aggressively into developing and launching programs. We are in the process of doing, again, and this is more of a cost-saving measure, and this preceded even the resolution in June, but I wanted to bring that to your attention. Doing a deep dive in our facility services operation to see what opportunities there may be there for certainly reallocation or other options, cost savings and other options to free up revenue or bring revenue into the university. And then finally, as I mentioned, we are in the process of engaging a consultant to look at some targeted revenue opportunities, knowing that you know, there is more to do there. So with that, I'd be happy. I know we presented a lot of information. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Sir.
So Lizelle, I have a quick question. I know we looked at the 5%, which was about $2 million, and then we went to that second slide that showed the next layer, for lack of a better term, of folk who were qualifying for the hardship waiver. You help me if I'm misunderstanding the figures, and I mean that sincerely. I thought I saw $1.2 million that was distributed in that sort of second tier. By my math, which is not my strong suit, that is another 2.5%. If the $2 million was 5%, the 1.2 is not quite 2.5%. Is that the wrong way to look at it?
No, as I think I mentioned at the beginning, if I didn't, I apologize. The university had already been putting money into its hardship waiver from the time we passed the student excellence fee. The increment that was put in this year was $700,000 due to the increase. So every increase that we have, we would put 5% more. So we're going, what we did was to get to the math, we went from 700,000 and then there was another 1.2 million that was distributed. So you might say, okay, if there's 7,000, there should be 1.4 million that was distributed. We still have $200,000 that are sitting out there and that we have not allocated yet because we don't know. Students become eligible for hardship waivers throughout the semester and into the next semester, and we are holding back what we think we might need in terms of additional students. So I hope that was
explanation enough. Maybe a better way of asking the question is, does this get us to are we at the 10%? Are we at the 15%?
Yes, yes, sir.
We are.
Yes,
but for the $200,000 holdback?
Yes,
okay,
yes,
thank you. That's
yes, exactly. I'm sorry, I should have said that early on.
So Dan, in summary, I think if you look out from a projection standpoint, from a kind of do nothing, our gap is 165 at the end of 5 years. If we aspired to take on kind of the flagship challenge, that gap's about 380 million.
Yes.
And so that kind of shows you the gap of revenue that you've either revenue or savings that you've got to achieve. There's not certainly that much in savings that's out there. Revenue sources are going to be either increases to cost of attendance, state appropriations if the state kicked in more, or online more enrollment, and then also certainly exploring other kind of innovative revenue opportunities. And so from that standpoint, because I know Mr. Williams will ask, when do you think from a consultant standpoint that we would have kind of that finalized and have those?
In terms of a comprehensive review, I would imagine it would be in the spring sometime that we would come back and just to go back to revenue sources, and we talked about this. I believe we talked about this in June. Our focus really needs to be on recurring revenue sources, because we can't rely on one-time revenues to solve our ongoing needs. And that's just an issue that, you can do that for certain things, but you can't do that for ongoing operations. And that's really what our focus we believe needs to be on.
A question, is there any effort to educate the public on the needs from the state level? Because there were some legislators that came out and said, well, why did LSU increase the fees? Because we fully funded the budget. And I didn't see any response from that, but any effort to try to educate the public and the legislators that, they didn't, there was a flat funding and as costs are going up, as we know.
That's a perennial emphasis on educating not just the legislature, but the public in terms of what our ongoing needs are, and the fact that holding flat, which we're very appreciative of, obviously, as the president has said, is not really keeping pace. We're just basically staying where we are.
Language is important here. We were never fully funded, and we were just not cut. And the governor protected us from being cut. And our legislators need to understand that the governor wants to put some more money into higher education. We got we got to catch up and just stay with these fixed cost growth. But higher ed wasn't fully funded. We were funded by not getting cut. We are funded at our 1991 funding level. 1991. That's where we are right now, and we held steady with the governor's help to hold us steady, because they would have knocked us back down into the 80s. So we've got some work to do with our legislators, and nobody was fully funded.
1991 was personally a good year for me. For one of my daughters was born then, but in terms of funding levels, it's not a good thing.
Well, I know this is a lot of information, but again, I think what we wanted everybody to have is facts that you can refer to. So when you see articles in the paper, you know what the real story is. And so, Dan, I would just encourage you to, keep moving on this in terms of looking at those other opportunities that we can explore to generate other revenues. So, any other questions?
Great presentation.
And thank you. The next item on the agenda is a supplier diversity kind of update. This is strictly an update, and is Sally here? Oh. Sally, I would ask you, in the interest of time, if you might give us if you could give us the Cliff Notes, which is how I made it through college. So if you could give us the Cliff Notes of this.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity to give you a brief update about the Supplier Diversity Program. This program, based on Mr. Williams' suggestion, was started last year about this time. We've developed the program. We've had some challenges and we've had some successes. We have gotten some good momentum, and we're very excited about the program. So basically, for the new board members, our mission is really to connect suppliers in the diverse suppliers with business opportunities that using this, our resources and connect them with different agencies. There are 4 pillars to our program, and those are reach, educate, engage, and develop. The Supplier Diversity Program is integrated into the procurement office. We currently have 2 staff positions. I also want to thank the working group that has been an advisory group of members of this board who have helped shape and grow the program. We've looked at what are best practices in many areas, including the private sector as well as other universities. We have a really good program foundation. We need to really move the needle in terms of engaging suppliers with our university departments. Is supplier diversity achievable? Yes. Can we sustain it long term? Yes. The answers to those things are by building partnerships and developing strategic partners within the business community. We look at opportunities to connect not only our departments, but resource agencies who can help foster and grow the businesses that are out there. And I am going to have Devon take the next little bit, because Devon is our diversity specialist, and she's been working on this area. Devon?
Good afternoon. Basically, we aim not only to reach, but also to educate the diverse suppliers. In doing the Business with LSU Forum that was in June, we were able to provide guidance with the services of the resource agencies that offer business, the services that the resource agencies offer to businesses. The Office of Procurement hosted multiple trainings on how to successfully participate in the procurement process here at LSU, and the state was also available to provide guidance on how to submit bids. As a result, we were able to host 60 one-on-one doing business with LSU meetings here on campus, where we talked to suppliers about their abilities, we reviewed the business profile, and we were able to educate them again on how to do business specifically to their commodity. The business profile is an overview of their services, their commodities, their previous clients, and it gives us an idea of the types of projects they can handle. Referring suppliers to different resource agencies to assist with certifications and trainings, as well as fostering relationships across the state, allows the Supplier Diversity Program to extend our network and to offer more opportunities for development. Encouraging the suppliers to visit our website to learn about certification and upcoming events, as well as sending our newsletter out to over 2,500 suppliers in the state of Louisiana. The newsletter includes opportunities of forums, workshops, and trainings, again, because we want to develop those suppliers.
Thank you, Devon. So we've changed a lot of policies and procedures for the inclusion of diverse suppliers in our bidding requirements. If you're seeking 3 bids, you have to have 1 that's a diverse supplier, et cetera. We're working with other departments on campus to make changes to some of the university policies in other areas, specifically with facilities management and construction. We've also worked with our major contract holders, like Aramark, for concession suppliers that are diverse, as well as partnering with someone like Grainger, who has partnered with some other small Louisiana suppliers for paper towels, for example, so that the Grainger becomes their distribution channel, and looking at opportunities to impact those diverse businesses. So we have created a supplier database. We're working to continue to develop that, and the next steps will be really to how do we connect the suppliers that we have been targeting with our business community. One of the ways we're going to do that, Devon will speak to that in a moment, is one of our supplier expos that we have that's coming up in September. So I mentioned that we've moved the needle. If you look at the total expenditures for 2017, and we look at the expenditures that we can impact, which is the purple shaded area, is the area we're looking to impact. As you can see, we can't impact salaries and wages with diverse suppliers. We cannot impact royalty payments and scholarships and some of those other expenditures. These numbers come from our audited financial statements. And so the numbers that you're going to see are for 18 are not the final numbers. This is our projected 18 spend at this point. And I have to note that Health Science Centers is not included since they have a different set of data because of their finance system. We're working through normalizing that data so that it matches our data. And as you can see, we have had some growth in the program. We went from 11.2% last year to 11.9%. That is an impact of $4.3 million of diverse spend in the local area.
Future development. As Sally mentioned earlier, we have an upcoming expo. We have over 237 suppliers registered, and in that number, 50 have been identified as diverse suppliers, with information technology, printing and promotional products, and construction leading the way. This is an opportunity for these diverse suppliers to connect with department leaders. We will coordinate commodity-specific events that will showcase suppliers and connect them to departments that utilize their services. Vendor shows will be hosted on campus as well as a networking opportunity for suppliers to connect with departments, as well as educational workshops on various topics: certification, what's your next step, and how to do business with LSU, just to name a few. Continuing to build partnerships across the state of Louisiana can result in business opportunities for our diverse suppliers. We have submitted a planning program matrix that basically outlines the focus on a monthly basis for the program. This will increase efficiency and productivity. We plan to host more events similar to the Equity in Business Workshop that focused on public works, construction, and maintenance. We collaborated with the Mayor's Office, Southern University, and the East Baton Rouge Parish School System. And the suppliers received information on bonding, insurance, and finance.
Thank you, Devon. With that, thank you for the opportunity, and I guess it's lunchtime.
Thank you. I want to say, you said earlier that it was at my suggestion. It was certainly not. It was the unanimous request of the Board of Supervisors to do this program. I certainly have been involved with it like others, but I just want to thank everybody and acknowledge that this is really a complete Board of Supervisors effort.
I have a question. When did the program start?
Well, we started working on the development of the program about last August when we did the concessions RFP and bid. and we really have gotten the program up and running since about April.
And right now, according to these figures, the diverse is right about 40-something% of the total budget, excluding Shreveport? Is that what I'm saying?
Today, we're at about 11.9% for the FY18 spend.
What the applicable diversity spend is $200 million. What's that represent?
The spend with diverse suppliers is 23.9 million on.
Well, your total spend's $515 million for 18, right? Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but the $200 million, is that diversity, that's what's available to spend, or is that what's going to?
That's what's available to spend. The 495, which is the total spend of the university on goods and services, that's available for, that we can manage from a procurement perspective. Okay. Because you take out the salaries and wages and those other kinds of items.
Okay.
Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Sorry, appreciate that update very much. If not, if there's no other business, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. All right, that concludes business.
At this time, I would like to convene I would ask Ms. Werner, would you please convene the Property and Facilities Committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I call the Property and Facilities Committee to order. And Ms. Thomason, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Werner?
Here.
Mr. Yarborough? Mr. Anderson? Mr. Armentor? Mr. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Dampf? Mr. Woods? Chair, you have quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Tony Lombardo to present the items on our agenda this morning.
Good afternoon, members of the board. And thank you, Mrs. Werner. Item 1, request the approval of the FY 19-20 5-year capital outlay budget request and first year prioritized categories for Louisiana State University. You have the information in your packet. It is the cap outlay request that goes to Board of Regents subsequent to this meeting and has to be at the division for November 1st.
Move approval.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Thank you. Tony?
Second item, request LSU A&M to authorize the president to execute a lease for construction of Alex Box Plaza and Tiger Athletics with Tiger Athletics Foundation. It's approximately 3,150 square feet of plaza area. They have drawings. They're pricing it right now. Before execution, we will know that number and approve it, contingent upon your approval today.
We're leasing space, and TAF is paying for the cost of the development of this?
It's a construction lease, effectively, that basically gets that piece of property off of our insurance for the duration of their construction and onto theirs.
Second?
Second.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Third item, request from LSU A&M to approve the schematic design of the new Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority house. Today we have architects from Fuchs Architects. Craig Vaughn will give you a very quick presentation.
Thank you very much. My name is Craig Vaughn. I'm principal with Fuchs Architects. We were honored to be selected to design the new Kappa house here on campus. I'll keep this short. It's 2.5 stories, 30,000 square feet. It'll house 70 to 72 residents. It's the goal in designing the house was to make it, to design the house was to make it feel like a home, but also to pay respect to the rich Louisiana architectural heritage. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
No questions? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Item 4, request from LSU A&M to approve the purchase of property located at 604 West Roosevelt Street, Baton Rouge. From, well, the board item is from the LSU Real Estate and Facilities Foundation, but they have not closed on it, so they will assign that closure directly to the institution, and subject to your approval, we would close on this next week.
Do you have any questions? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Any opposed? Thank you. Tony?
Item 5, request from LSU Health Sciences Center, New Orleans, to approve an intent to lease agreement with an affiliated 501c3 organization for the construction of improvements to floors 4 through 8 of the interim LSU hospital building. This will speed up the progress of an ongoing state project to renovate this building.
Does anyone have any questions? Dr. Ollier, would you elaborate on the specifics quickly on 4 through 8? That was
Thank you. The interim LSU hospital was vacated when LCMC moved over to the new University Medical Center. It's been a derelict building since that time. It's been 3 years now. We have self-generated funds that we've got approval in capital outlay to start renovation into an expanded innovation and simulation center for training. Our faculty offices for clinical faculty are in the old medical school building on 1542. Only half of that building is usable since Katrina, and our plan is to renovate the upper portion of the interim hospital to move our clinical faculty into new office spaces in that building.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Item 6, request from LSU Health Sciences Center, New Orleans, to authorize the accept a transfer of state-owned nursing home certificate of need and license to negotiate a lease with affiliated hospital to operate and manage the nursing home.
Do we have questions on this issue? Any comments, Dr. Ollier, you'd like to put in?
You know, the main purpose of this is to try to expand our training in geriatric care. Since Katrina hit, we've lost our geriatric residency program. We only have 3 geriatricians on our faculty, and there's an increasing need for geriatric care across the city and absolutely across the state as well. So this is an attempt to have patient access that we can use. To get a geriatric program, you really need to have a dedicated facility where you can use for training, and this will allow us to do that. It's at a no-cost risk for LSU.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Any opposed?
Item 7, request from LSU Health Sciences Center, New Orleans, to approve an intent to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement between the LSU Board of Supervisors and the Board of Supervisors of LCTC, or Community and Technical College, on behalf of Delgado Community College.
Dr.
Okay. Once we vacate 1542 Tulane, that is a 200,000 square foot empty building. I don't have the funds to renovate that. Delgado has capital outlay in order to expand their nursing and allied health schools, and so they will take over that vacated facility and renovate it, so it'll be one less derelict building in the city. They will then move out of their Delgado School of Nursing, which is adjacent to one of our other facilities, and we will resume ownership of that building. So it's sort of a trade of the buildings.
Thank you.
And that's a net savings. It'll be a savings to LSU then by that transfer, operation cost.
In fact, they're going to, as soon as we do the cooperative endeavor agreement, they're going to assume all the maintenance and all. We will continue to occupy it until our renovation at the interim hospital is completed. So it'll save us about $1 million a year.
Is there a motion to approve? So moved. Second? Any opposed? Thank you. Tony?
Item 8, Request from LSU A&M to approve an exchange of property with the Louisiana National Guard at LSU Innovation Park. This is a property swap that helps both entities achieve their master plans for the area. It just makes good sense and gives us frontage on the main drag through that facility.
Are there any questions? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Tony, that's the grant too that Congressman Graves helped us get on that frontage? For the road project.
Well, this is frontage to the future boulevard on the master plan.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Yes. Any opposed? Thank you. Tony, number 9.
Number 9, request from the Pennington Biomedical Research Center to name room M4063 in the Clinical Research Building the Art E. Favre Executive Conference Room.
Any questions? Motion to approve? Is there a second? Second. Any opposed? Thank you. I believe this concludes the business of the committee, and without any objection, we adjourn.
Thank you, Mrs. Werner. We are almost a half hour behind schedule, and so in the interest of time, we will not convene the athletic committee today. With that, we will adjourn the committee meetings for a lunch break and return at 1 p.m.
Just a friendly reminder, the board members will get lunch first. So please let the board members get lunch first. Thank you.